Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to crack open these powerful ancient texts and really see how they connect with us today. And today, we're jumping into Psalm 68. It's attributed to King David, and honestly, it's described as this like triumphant sweeping hymn. But I want to get under that description. Why is it so powerful? What's this celebration of God's power, his victories, his care for the oppressed all about? Our mission really is to pull out that timeless wisdom and see how it can genuinely strengthen our trust and relationship with God right now.
Yeah, that's a great place to start because Psalm 68, it really does offer this rich tapestry. It weaves together these key historical moments for Israel.
Right, not just facts, but like living proof.
Exactly. You've got the Exodus,
Mhm.
God bringing them out of slavery. Then there's Sinai, that incredible encounter, and the Ark's journey to Jerusalem, which is all about God dwelling with his people.
Okay.
And it mixes all that history with this bold hope for global worship. It sees a future where everyone acknowledges God.
Mm.
So key themes jump out, like God scattering his enemies right at the start, verses 1 to 3. His power is undeniable.
Mm.
But then you get this incredibly compassionate side. Verse 5 calls him a father to the fatherless and a
Mhm.
judge of the widows. That was huge back then.
A really countercultural idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It also talks about him leading his people out of bondage, verses 7 to 10, providing for them, and his presence, verses 16 to 18, even mentioned chariots of angels.
So his presence is powerful, not passive.
Precisely. And it all builds towards this big call for everyone, all kingdoms, to praise him. That's verses 24 right through 35.
Okay, that is quite a scope. It's like a whole story of God's interaction with people packed in there.
Yeah.
Let's unpack this and see how these ancient truths really speak to us today, especially for strengthening that trust, that relationship with God. Maybe we start with that idea of God defending the vulnerable. You mentioned verse 5, in the ancient world, fatherless children, widows. They were incredibly exposed, right?
Oh, completely. They had very few legal rights, little economic stability. Their survival often hinged on others being just or charitable.
So when the psalm says, a father of the fatherless and a judge of the widows is God in his holy habitation, that's more than just poetic language.
It's radical. It shows God's justice isn't just about, punishing bad guys later. It's deeply rooted in his active, compassionate care for the weakest. His justice is his mercy, in a way.
And how does that connect now? Because the world still has so many people who feel unseen, vulnerable.
Well, that's exactly where it hits home, isn't it? Whether it's literal orphans, widows, refugees, single parents struggling. Psalm 68 insists God sees them. He cares. His nature moves him to act.
And it's not just about God acting, is it? It sort of calls us.
Exactly. It calls us to have that same heart. So the question becomes, how do we live that out? Sure, support organizations, that's important, but maybe it's also about advocating for change or just building communities where vulnerable people are truly empowered, not just sort of pitied or rescued.
Moving beyond just charity to real change.
Right. And grasping that God's justice is compassion that really strengthens our trust in him. We see, he's good, he's active, not just distant. It makes his involvement in the world feel much more real.
That's a powerful way to think about justice. It connects his power to his heart, which actually leads nicely into the next point, this idea that victory belongs to God.
Yes, the song kicks off with that incredible line, "Let God arise, let his enemies be scattered." For Israel, this wasn't just wishful thinking.
It was memory, wasn't it? Based on their history.
It was foundational. They remember the Red Sea, Jericho, times when their own strength was clearly not enough. It was a constant reminder. Real victory comes from God stepping in. He fights for them, often in surprising ways.
And that feels so relevant. Life throws these challenges, these battles at us, and it's easy to feel like, okay, I have to fix this. I have to fight this alone.
We carry that weight.
Yeah. But this song starts with a prayer. God, you arise, you fight. It makes me think maybe we need to pause sometimes before charging in. Ask ourselves, okay, is this my fight? Or do I need to trust God and let him lead here?
That's not about being passive, though. It's about discernment.
Right, it's discernment. How do we partner with God? Knowing when to act and when to trust his power. Inviting faith into the problem solving itself, not just as a fallback.
Exactly. And doing that, relying on his power, it really deepens trust. It lets you rest in his strength, his wisdom, even when you don't see the way forward. Takes off some of that pressure to be totally self-sufficient.
It frees you up. So if God is defending and fighting, how do we respond? You mentioned David looks back, that worship involves remembering.
Yes, and that's maybe a bit challenging for us sometimes. We like to share the highlight reel, right?
Definitely. It's hard to talk about the struggles, the doubts, the wilderness times.
But David does. In Psalm 68, he recounts the Exodus, Sinai, the Ark, moving verses 7 to 18. These aren't just history lessons. They're the bedrock of Israel's relationship with God. Remembering what God did, the good and the hard becomes this profound act of worship.
Anchoring future hope in past faithfulness.
Precisely. And notice, he includes the struggles, the wilderness, the warfare. It's worship with the whole story, not just the shiny parts.
So the lesson for us is be authentic in our worship, include the whole journey.
I think so. Share your testimony, the real one. What has God actually brought you through? Not just the victories, but the process. Sharing that, the messy middle, can be incredibly encouraging for others.
And it strengthens your own faith too, reminding yourself.
Absolutely. It deepens your gratitude, reminds you God is faithful, and cements your trust that he'll carry you through whatever's next. It's like building your own track record of his faithfulness.
That makes sense. Those vulnerable stories often connect most. And from that personal and group history, the psalm seems to zoom out even further, to God's global greatness.
It really does. Verse 32 is amazing. Sing unto God, ye kingdoms of the earth. Think about that. David sees God's reign not just over Israel, but is universal.
Which was pretty unusual back then compared to other nations' gods.
Totally radical. Most gods were local, tribal. David envisions God's majesty extending everywhere, anticipating a time when all nations would praise him. It's a truly global vision.
And that feels really important today, doesn't it? Sometimes faith can get very individualized. My relationship with God.
It can become privatized, yeah. But Psalm 68 pushes back. It calls us to this huge, expansive view of God, global, just active in the whole world, not just my little corner.
So how do we live that out? Praying for nations.
That's part of it,
Huh.
but maybe also learning about believers elsewhere, understanding their reality,
Well,
supporting global missions or justice work, recognizing we're part of this massive worldwide thing God is doing.
right, seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah, and that bigger perspective, understanding God's massive scope and purpose, it really deepens our reverence. Our trust grows because we see his plan is so much bigger than just us, even when things look chaotic globally.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what's the takeaway for us today? Psalm 68 sounds like this thunderous declaration. Praising a God who rides the heavens, defends the weak, wins the victory.
It is, and it's a call, isn't it? A call to remember his power, celebrate his justice, actively care for the overlooked, and join in this loud, joyful worship that covers everything history, the present, the whole earth. Our struggles, our wins.
And you're saying that alignment, that joining in with his heart and actions, that's where trust deepens.
That's exactly it. Worship becomes more than just songs. It's about aligning ourselves with God's heart for both victory and compassion. Seeing his hand, trusting his power, joining his purpose. That's where our trust is really forged and our relationship gets stronger.
That makes worship very active, very involved. So thinking about this incredible picture of God in Psalm 68, the final thought for you listening is, how will you apply this? How will you let this psalm help you more deeply trust and connect with the God of both, thunderous power and incredibly tender care?